Hello, welcome back. It's week 82 on Out on That Line. I'm Geoff with my co-host Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Geoff, I've only got one thing to say, and that's Hundeja, which translates to let's rock in Korean. Let the great K-pop experiment commence.
Yes, this is going to be an interesting week. So we decided, initially, BTS had come out with, if you haven't heard of BTS, like, you probably are living under you're one of the few people in the world at this point. If you have an internet connection, you don't know who they are, or at least who their fans are. Just look them up. It's a pretty wild ride. We'll give you as much information as we can during this podcast. But they came out with an album, and it shows how much we knew about K-pop and about BTS because we said, "Oh, let's do this album," and then we saw that this album was like 2-something hours long. And it's like, we're dedicated to this podcast, but it's not like we're getting paid for this. So maybe let's find another road to go down. Because it turns out it's also an anthology album. Yeah. So it's like a greatest hits with a couple new little pieces in there for fans. So we instead decided just to kind of do K-pop in general. Just to dive in about like the ins and outs of the industry itself. Like we'll get into what the contracts are like. You know, some of the popular bands, like kind of how it's gotten to this point that it's at. I think when we lead into that discussion, we're going to dive in head first. But we do have a couple of things to knock out of the way first. Are you ready, Alex? I have 2 pieces of news here.
Okay, I'm ready. Dock it to me.
I have our next 2 albums selected. The Foist comes out this Friday. The 17th, I believe, is this Friday. We record on Wednesday, is by the band called Foals.
Yep.
So they're coming out with a new album. Fiance of the pod, Marla, has requested that we do that one. She is a big Foals fan. So she's got her fingers and toes crossed that it's going to be a good album. But we'll take a look at that one. I've liked what I've heard from Foals so far, so I'm looking forward to it. A week to the day after that album comes out, a little band you may have heard me mention, Coheed and Cambria, releases their new album, Vaxis 2, A Window of the Waking Mind. So we'll be doing that the following week. So we've got our 2 next albums locked and loaded after this. The runway is clear, my friend.
It's pretty good. It takes all of the thinking out of podcasting, which I didn't think was possible, yet somehow it did.
Well, I didn't know there was any to start with. I wouldn't have signed up if there was.
Yeah, exactly.
But so Coheed's going out to support that album, and I'll be there with bells on, baby. When they come to New Braunfels, Texas, I'll be there with bells on. They have recently replaced their opening band. It was Dance Gavin Dance, and I don't know if you ever listened to Dance Gavin Dance.
Can't say I did,
but don't bother. The music's about as good as the band name.
Whoa.
It's not great,
yeah.
you know. I really just, I don't like them. If there's any children of the fence listening to this, the fan bases cross over a lot. Like there's a lot of Coheed fans that love Dance Gavin Dance as well, but they have been removed from the tour because they're, I assume now former lead singer. I hope former. He was removed from this tour at least. I don't know if he's like out indefinitely. Tillian Pearson is his name. Was accused of sexual assault.
Ew.
Apparently a fan, he got in contact through the DMs with a fan, went to, they got together, and apparently during the process he was very pushy, did not take no for an answer. I don't know how far into, how far down the road that went. I don't think the reports, or at least nothing I've seen, has gone like into great detail about like the specifics of what happened, but it did not sound good from the statement that the woman made. It sounds like she was made to be very uncomfortable during the whole situation. So rightfully so, Dance Gavin Dance removed Tillian Pearson from the band. They did not drop themselves from the tour though. They have also lost their bass player like 2 months ago. I mean, or maybe a little bit longer than that, but very recent and like a very sudden loss. They continued touring after that because the bass player's family like said that's what he would want them to do. So can you imagine being in that headspace, and then you're about to go on tour with Coheed and Cambria, and while you may not out there, folks, you may not think Coheed and Cambria is like a big deal. The fan base is rabid for Coheed and Cambria. Like they sell out. They do the mid-size venues. So like in Mansfield, Massachusetts, I don't know what they call it now, but they have one there. The Bank of America Pavilion or whatever it's called now in Boston is like, that's the size venue that Coheed plays. Down here in Austin, it's the 360 Amphitheater that they play out at the racetrack. So it's usually, I don't know, 8 to 10,000 people, I would assume, fits in venues of that size, something like that, like several thousand. So this was going to be Dance Gavin Dance's like big time introduction to like a bigger public. And now they're not going at all, because even after kicking their lead singer out, Coheed said, nope, you're not going on tour with us. We're not going to have that sort of baggage. Like, we're promoting an album. We're going to bring in Alkaline Trio.
Oh, shit.
Instead. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like, major upgrade. Major upgrade. You know, like, sorry, Dance Gavin Dance, like, your lead singer's a fucking creep. But, I mean, most of the time that's not a first time thing. And apparently he'd been, like, really good buddies with them for years and years. So it's like, I don't know. Like, if he's that kind of person to do that once, like, how did you not ever see that before? And, like, don't act all surprised, because people are, like, pissed that they got taken off that tour. Like, there are some, like, hardcore Dance Gavin Dance fans, and they are upset that they're not allowed on that tour.
Well, I mean, sucks to suck, I guess, but it's, hey, Coheed's it's just business. They're not going to get involved, like you said, in that fucking circus. So it's not like a disloyal thing to do to a band that, yes, suffered great personal tragedy, but was also fronted by a cretin. Like, you don't really owe them anything in this business, you know what I mean? Unless they're, like, super tight and it's this great personal betrayal. But even then, like, you know, you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And Coheed decided to fold them, I think, wisely.
Yes, before they even saw the flop. So I think that was a good plan. And I just, like, if you're Dance Gavin Dance, like, bros, you need some time off.
You need a better name, too.
Like, yeah, better name, but you need some time off, dude. Like, your bass player died. Like, his family, okay, they said to tour. But, like, is that how you really want to grieve? I realize, like, this is your living. This is how you make money. But, like, use the time wisely. Like, find a lead singer, maybe change the name. But find a lead singer and, like, find something new. You know, get yourselves back together, because you've just gone through a shitty few months. Just probably the icing on the cake with getting kicked off the biggest tour you're ever going to be on. But, like, that might not be your last chance at something like that. So get your shit together. Come up with a better name. Maybe some better music. And we'll see where you're at in a few years.
Yeah, we'll reevaluate. We'll reassess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I'm pumped to see Alkaline Trio.
Yeah.
Fucking pumped.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, so this summer, Alkaline Trio, Coheed and Cambria, Turnstile with My Chemical Romance.
Wow.
Yeah, going to be a banger summer.
You know what my next concert is?
What's that?
On July 6th, I will be going to see The Dead and Company with Tanner.
Oh, that'll be awesome, dude. With John Mayer?
With John Mayer.
Hell yeah.
Yep. Phil Lesh is old ass. He's 80. He's like, we got to knock it off. And I think Bob Weir was like, yeah, it's probably fine.
Yeah, it's probably time.
They're going to dump it.
Who else is, where are you seeing them?
SPAC, Saratoga Performing Arts Center.
Okay. I wonder, they're definitely going to bring some Fish members out there if they're over there. Because SPAC is like, I think Fish has like planted their like home team flag in that arena or venue, whatever.
It's definitely not going to be Trey. I could see them doing like Mike Gordon or something, even though he's like a noted creep too, apparently.
Oh,
I don't know.
Well,
I might be shooting my mouth off there. I don't know. I thought I heard that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Fish fans are probably not that violent, so I don't know if we have to worry about it.
Yeah, well.
I'm not even sure they know how to use the internet, so they might not even know what a podcast is.
They don't know where they are right now. They've huffed so much nitrous that they just think that they've always been at the dentist listening.
See, that's the thing. Like, I think of the Grateful Dead, I think of like mushrooms, weed, acid. I think of Fish, and I just think of like crusty people in a parking lot huffing nitrous.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Like, that's what I think about when I think of Fish.
I need a fresh balloon. Fucking wild.
Ugh. Ugh,
Absolutely wild.
if you ever see me at a Fish concert, that's how you know. Like, you know what the thing is when everyone says, "What's your phrase that like your family or your friends would know that you're like not okay, that like you're kidnapped, something horrible has happened to you"? What's your like phrase? That'd be like mine would be, "Yeah, I'm going to the Fish concert."
I am at a Fish concert.
Yeah, that's how you know. Like, raise the alarm. Something has gone horribly wrong.
Jeff's in big trouble.
Yeah,
Let's go extract him.
it might already be too late.
Oh, fuck.
All right. Well, what do you say we get into the main event here? What we all came here to see. People were clamoring for this, Alex. They were saying, one thing we saw all through the comments everywhere on our YouTube, where you can go and subscribe and also comment and tell us what you want to hear. Everybody was saying, you guys got to check out K-pop. You're going to love K-pop. You should. They ever hear this band called BTS? You're going to love them. Go check out K-pop. And we were like, you know what? We heard it enough times that we did it. We did it. We've got, what did we do? Like 10 songs. We made a little playlist, dug into some history about like how it all started, and I feel like gave ourselves a good introduction to the whole thing. So I first want to pose to you a question, Alex. What was your first like exposure in K-pop? Like, what was the thing that you look back on, you remember like, oh, this was the first time I really remember something like this?
I have a very unique history with K-pop. I was watching Family Guy, and you may find this hard to believe, Jeff, but they did an extremely racist episode of television where they went to South Korea.
Uh-huh.
And the details are inconsequential, but at one point they reference K-pop, and they show the music video for Touch My Body by Sistar. And then they proceed to go on and be super racist for the rest of the episode and talk about how the food gives you diarrhea and they eat dogs and stuff. It's like top-notch stuff, Seth MacFarlane. You just keep hitting the home runs.
Family Guy being racist. That's strange.
Problematic Family Guy, you don't say.
Yeah.
But,
what, the Cleveland show? What?
But hey, I was watching it, so no room to judge. At any rate, I remember watching it and being like, okay, that's kind of a like catchy song, and obviously the music video is some like low-key bikini cheesecake, you know what I mean? It's girls playing with whipped cream and baking in the kitchen in booty shorts and stuff. It's like
excellent.
It's not Megan Thee Stallion like giving herself a gynecological exam in the music video levels of salacious, but it's enough to tease the mind theater, you know?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then I downloaded the song and I kept listening to it a bunch. Like it's a great gym song. It really kind of gets you fired up. It's fun. It's party music. Okay. And that was my first and only exposure to K-pop until preparing to do this episode.
I think my first one was Gangnam Style.
Good point.
And I think that was, and I remember there was a time when I think people kind of reminded you how much you kind of resembled him when you'd do your hair like that, wear the dark sunglasses. I think I do remember. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I do.
But yeah, that was my first one. And then I remember hearing about how much Psy like hated America.
Oh, really?
He had he had a concert or something where he had these little like tanks that I think they had like American flags or something. He like stomped all over them or something like just basically was making fun of the America's military industrial complex, which is a true thing. And I'm like, wow, he came out with the guy that did Gangnam Style is like making like political discourse right now. Like what's going on? And then I never really heard anything about K-pop until I started working for the company that I work for now. I'll leave the name out of it. I don't know of any legal ramifications I might experience from that. But one of the songs that plays is one that we're going to talk about. Maybe a good start to maybe the weirdness of K-pop, the weirdness that it's capable of. And it's Cat and Dog by the band Tomorrow X Together, which I don't understand the name. But it's basically like he's saying, I feel like I'm your cat, but I'm your dog. Like whatever, I don't know, maybe I'm more your like companion instead of someone that's just around. Like I guess the difference between a dog and a cat. But the whole video, because they play the music videos where I work as well. The whole video is like one of them is like actually dressed up with like dog ears and stuff, and like they wear like the makeup is like subtly makes them look like animals, and it's just such a weird song, especially to play at work. Like if you really watch the, thankfully I don't think any of the customers ever like really pay attention to the videos, because some of the ones that play there are like really weird. And I don't, this song I was like, I didn't realize that K-pop was still a thing. I think I knew about like BTS just from randomly seeing it, but I didn't realize like that there's 15 BTSs. Like that's the one thing I didn't realize, is that it's not just one band. They might be the biggest ones, but like Blackpink, Tomorrow X Together, that band EXO that you put a couple of their songs on there, like that Red Velvet, like they're all massive. Like if you go on their like Spotify or their YouTube or any of that, millions and millions and millions of views. It is incredible the amount of success that they've had. And it kind of reminds me of when we were growing up, like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. Like you could go down a laundry list, because you have the big ones, Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, but then there was 98 Degrees, like that next tier down. There was O-Town. Do you remember them? A-Teens, BB Mac. I mean, there was tons of these like pop bands. And I feel like when I look at K-pop and like the bands that are involved now and the sounds and the music, that's what I see is like the late 90s all over again.
Yeah, it's definitely the late 90s repeating themselves, and like it's the Disney kids phenomenon. You know what I mean? Like they go through training to become a well-oiled pop killing machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it is no different than the stuff we grew up listening to. So I'll start off the top by saying it's not for me. I don't think it's as weird as maybe people think it is. I think it's like a lot of songs that really feel like they're about to get going and never take off. I don't think they're especially like, I think a lot of the weirdness comes from being an American consumer, seeing a song with a title like Do 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 by Blackpink and being like, how quirky, but like that, the weirdness is just like some kind of cultural barrier, because when you listen to the music itself, it's not that whimsical or different. It's pretty generic, and that's by design because it is an entire industry, and we'll get into that. And I say none of that to throw shade at anyone who likes K-pop or K-pop itself, because by its very definition, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. Right down the middle, classically structured pop, A, B, C, B, C, C. Clive Davis, get the fuck out. Like, it's doing what it came here to do, and you can't fault it for that because it's a fucking phenomenon. So I enjoy the phenomenon more than I like the music.
Yes. And I think it's the kind of thing where if the songs are on, like I'm not going to change them, but I don't think it's something that I'm really ever going to go out of my way to hear, you know? And I think it's just if you're a huge pop music fan, like if you loved like Ariana Grande, Selena Gomez, you know, all the like of in recent years, like Lady Gaga, you know, if you loved that music, you're probably going to find a lot of stuff that you like in K-pop. You're probably going to find a bunch of things that you love. I think they feel like, it's funny how comparable it is to like the late 90s groups, like in like the Spice Girls. I feel like the Spice Girls is probably the best example of picking the people to fill the roles. You have like the cool one, you have the older mature one, you have like the dangerous one, you have the really young innocent one, you know. And I feel like a lot of these groups have that, but you have a lot more of that, because where those groups like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Spice Girls, all of those, they'd have like 4 or 5 people in the group. Like BTS has what, 10? You know, Tomorrow X Together is the same thing. Like they all have a bunch of people. I think Blackpink has a regular amount. It's like 5 or 6.
I think it's 5, yeah.
I want to say. But it's like, I feel like the average size of the K-pop group versus, you know, the American version of that in the late 90s is there's a lot more. So maybe they're just trying to fill like more roles, or they're doubling up on certain ones. But it's, I don't know. I feel like I'm just watching that all over again, just from a different country.
And when you have these like 20-person bands and a finite number of archetypes, like you said, the bad boy, the shy one, the pretty one, they have those clearly defined roles in K-pop. There's a face who's the handsome one. or the pretty one. There's a leader who's typically the oldest. There's one who's a noted vocalist. There's a designated rapper. There's one super talented dancer. And in these groups that are, 20 people deep, you have groups of people, 3 to 4 of them, who hold down the bulk of the dancing while the people who can sing really well are singing. And then when the singers take a powder, the dancers get a chance to come up front and shine, and then the rapper comes in and everybody kind of cools out. Like, it really, like, it is an industry. Like, it's trickled down industry. There's K-pop, the industry. First of all, there's the South Korean government. There's K-pop, the industry. And then there's these labels, and then there's these groups. Individuals aren't even considered. After 10 years, you get to go do a solo thing, but for the most part, they own your ass for a little while. And it's crazy. The whole thing is just like, the genre gets criticized for being highly manufactured, but again, that's the whole entire point. It's an industry. You can't get mad at it for that. But it is very interesting to watch all the stuff that we grew up with kind of being industrialized and put in front of us at this age. It's wild. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it was industrialized and put in front of us then too. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. You might go about it a different way. You might like have different genres of music that you steal from, but I don't think you really do. Like, you could take like a Backstreet Boys song and think about, there was the Backstreet Boys songs, and then like New Kids on the Block did the same thing. Maybe that's a better example. New Kids on the Block, the song Hangin' Tough, like they're just like preening, they're just like sticking their chests out. They're like hanging tough. And you'd like listen to that. And if you didn't listen to like Pantera or Metallica back then, if all you listened to was like the Osmonds and stuff like that, like you're going to think a song like Hangin' Tough is pretty tough, and I think that's the same deal with this music, is because they have like your designated rapper, they have the ones that's like the bad boy. And it's like, if you don't experience like actual versions of that in your everyday life, that version of it is going to be what that is to you. And so I think there's so many people, and it skews younger for a reason, is because when you're young, you don't have the access to like anything you want to have, especially when you're like 12, 13, 14, 15. You have the access to like what's in your house, but the world is not that big to you at that point. It's like you're pretty limited in your worldview, in what you're allowed to consume, for the most part. I'd say that very generally. So things like BTS and Tomorrow X Together and Blackpink and Red Velvet and all these K-pop bands, like those are going to represent the ideal, like for people that maybe haven't found it anywhere else or don't want to look for it anywhere else. Like that to them is what they want to see. And the reason that they're so successful is because they're always finding like young, good looking people to be in these bands. So one, it's always going to be like easy to look at, they find, and there is some very talented people. Like there's some singers in that I heard that, and a lot of it might be in the studio, but I mean, it's like, there's some fun melody lines. Like there's some good singers, it's like, there's some talent involved with that. Like it's not easy to dance like they do. It's not easy to sing like they do. It's like very hard work, I'm sure, to be part of this thing. But it's like, it is so manufactured, and I think it's for a reason. It's for people that want that, and there's a lot, apparently. That's exactly what they're going to get, and you don't have to be surprised by anything that they do. And that's why it's such a scandal when they go off the tracks.
And it's just something, you're giving people something to believe in, as corny as that sounds. Like, the proliferation of K-pop really came from Twitter, especially. Like, that is where the massive concentrations of K-pop stans concentrate and communicate and build upon their community, is through primarily Twitter, but social media. And these record labels aggressively market them social media and video first. They don't care about radio play anymore. They want to reach an international audience who's not going to get a Korean radio station with their Sirius XM package. So they want to get it out there. It's why a lot of the bands have started to change their names to like English words. As part of their Idol Academy training, they have to learn Mandarin, Japanese, and English, because those are their 3 biggest markets. Like, it's designed, it's like Black Widow, you know what I mean? Like, these are people trained from adolescence to be characters who do sing really well, who dance like crazy, who can rap, they're aesthetically pleasing. It's like the total package. Why wouldn't you enjoy that? It's Marvel, it's Broadway, it's Disney on Ice. It's a spectacle. And it's fun as hell. I don't like the music, but the whole thing around it, if you take the predatory aspect of the labels out of it, it's just good fun. It's kayfabe. It's wrestling, WrestleMania.
But the problem is that I think, especially in K-pop, is that you cannot take the predatory aspect of the labels out of it, because I think that's so ingrained. It is the culture. Like, everybody is just like, that's expected. These people sign on. And I know you mentioned that you had like more in-depth like facts and figures and all that sort of stuff, and of how these contracts work. But I think that's a really important part of this, because I wonder if the contracts were similar for like the bands in the late 90s. And I think, from what I remember, I think they were. Like, it was a scandal if you found out they were dating anybody. Like, it was, a scandal if they were seen with their shoulders showing out in public or something like that. I remember it was a big deal if they did anything other than just be there for our entertainment. And I think that's probably, maybe to even more of an extent, in K-pop.
Yeah, their public personas are tightly controlled. Once that image is created, once there's a concept for a group, if the concept for your group is like girl crush and it's all about being like the Korean girl next door, then yeah, you can't go out. You definitely can't be gay. You can't be going out dating dudes. You can't be going out partying and drinking and doing drugs. This whole thing, like, they live in dormitories together. Their meals are controlled, diet controlled. Some of them like put themselves into a state of dehydration because they're trying to like cut weight. Some of them get like kind of browbeat into surgery to make them more aesthetic. You've got everything but that nose, like, and they're picked based on aesthetics. It's extremely competitive. It is like the Academy really does make diamonds in the most like horrifying way possible. I'm sure it's not a total fucking nightmare for everybody, but there are nightmare stories. And then you get to the contracts, and essentially these groups, most of them like don't really break even until they're like 5 years into their career, because they have to pay out, or they have to pay back all of the trainee debt that incurred while they were being tormented. So they have to pay for that.
That's crazy to me. Yeah.
And they're really hard, really long, really restrictive contracts. There's 3 major labels, SM Entertainment being one of them, one of the bigger ones, who really kind of had to step up and clean up their practices. So I think they treat the artists better. Like, I don't think Blackpink or BTS, to my knowledge, are trapped in any kind of horrific situation. I think, no, that was an EXO. Never mind. But anyway, these contracts can be very, very like, they own you. It's like American Idol. They owned those people to start. Like, hey, you won our competition, so now we're going to market the shit out of you. So it's, it's something we're very familiar with in this country. But again, it is like an entire industry depends on this. Like, it's absolutely wild.
It's crazy to me. And I don't really particularly have an issue with, if a kid really wants to be like in show business, and I think, 12, like 11, 12, 13, I don't know how early they start them with this, but if the kid like really wants to be a star and they're just like putting in hard work to do it, like, I don't have an issue with that. It's when it's like, oh, maybe you should think about getting that. Oh, those ears, they're sticking out a little too much. It's like those things where it's like when they tell you that you have to like literally change who you are, what you look like to be part of that, that's a problem for me. That's when it gets too far. So I guess, I don't know if you can draw an imaginary line before it gets to the point where you're making these kids do something that they don't want to do, that doesn't make them feel fulfilled. If you could draw the line before that, I got no problem with any of that. Because I think if that's their dream, that's their dream. That's what they want to do. But after reading about some of these contracts, and they were referred to as, and I don't know if this is going to be bad for the algorithm, so I'm just going to spell it, SLAVE contracts is kind of the word that gets thrown around about those, because from what I saw, they're anywhere from like 7 to 15 years for contracts. They have to pay back that, like, the trainee debt that they incur. So learning how to dance, learning how to sing, studio time, all that kind of stuff. They have to pay all that back. Once that happens, though, it's not like they get a big cut of the profits. They might see between all of them for like all of BTS, for example, and I don't know what their specific contract is. I'm just using like a group of that size. That's why the size of the group matters, is they're going to split maybe like 5% of what they're bringing in after that. So like, while they may be profitable, the labels are the ones making out like bandits, which I guess is how it was, in the late 80s with New Kids on the Block.
Or
Late
like Lou
90s with
Pearlman
like,
and the Backstreet Boys,
yeah, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and like all of that, all the Disney kids that came up and became pop stars, like they spent their whole lives basically getting told how to act, what to do. That's why what Britney Spears has done with her life since was, and especially like right after she like kind of gained a bit of her own autonomy before she got locked into that conservatorship, like, she was doing some stuff that people were like, oh, not my Britney Spears. She would never do something like that. And it's like, all it ever was her just trying to exist and then just breaking because the world just wouldn't let her. So I see it happen with that. And how many people did it happen to that weren't as big of stars as Britney Spears that we just never heard about? How many people in K-pop are going through that sort of thing, but aren't as big as BTS or Blackpink or Tomorrow X Together, so they're getting churned through this mill and it doesn't work out for them. Maybe they never like meet the standards that the labels are trying to impose on them. And then what do? They've signed this contract. Do they get released from the contracts? I never read anything about that. They basically just like don't get promoted, don't get pushed, and they just have to like live out to the end of this contract, and then they can maybe do what they want to do. But it's still a very restrictive music industry over there. So it's like they can't break in any other way.
When I see it as like, if they're not going to make money for the label, I bet the label cuts bait. And again, I don't have evidence to prove this, but I think if you have an underperforming group, they don't even like make it to the launch pad. And I don't think you spend money to keep a group that wasn't ready for the limelight around. So I bet they dump them. I don't know for sure. But it's just like the labels are finding these people, training them, producing them, marketing them. They're an absolute juggernaut. The big three agencies joined together. And it is at the point where like the South Korean government has a vested interest in this, because I think K-pop as an industry grew 44.8% in 2020. So like,
I believe it.
They bring a between K-pop, K-dramas, K-beauty. Hey man, I'll admit it. I love Korean beauty products. They're very mattifying. They're great. They smell great. They're cool as shit. Nice gel moisturizer. I'm into the K-beauty stuff. But that is like this Korean wave, as they call it, has brought so much money into the country, but it's also brought like soft power on like the world stage. So instead of being like, we're South Korea and we're going to fuck you up with our military, they're like, we're South Korea and we're going to show you just how cool South Korea is by absolutely dominating with Korean culture. And it's like a low key power move to like assert the fact that you're a big dog at the table. So like the South Korean government has a vested interest in K-pop. It's pretty wild. And I don't even mean that in like a negative, creepy way. I think it's a wild phenomenon. Like imagine the United States government like really, really putting its entire back into like the fucking, I don't know, what's a genre that's very specific to America? Stomp and holler, roots, Americana.
Country.
Yeah, we go whole hog on just, we're going to push country to the rest of the world. I'm sure they'll love it.
We're gonna make Luke Bryan a worldwide star.
Like he goddamn deserves to be.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, and I think because Korea's like a much smaller country than the U.S. Like we have a lot of other things, going on. We have, we're basically a teetering on the edge of, fascism as we speak right now. So I think it's like we've got other things and always have had other things to worry about. With Korea, it's like if they have an opportunity to really like push their country and become a global power, like, and this is the avenue they do it with, I'd much rather it be through like arts and culture than military. I think that's the way to do it. Like that's a great example. I think some of the things they do with the artists, and I think with the contracts and things like that, I think that can be a little bit of a problem. Especially the fact that like they're just not allowed to date. And like that's not even because I think in America it was like they were allowed to date, but it was like under wraps. Like you could not be in public with each other. They would like set up like hotel meets or something where it's like you could see each other for a little bit, but it was like not to ever get out in the papers. I think in K-pop, like they're not allowed to do it at all. Like they don't facilitate any of that. Like you're not allowed to be politically active or like say anything political whatsoever, because I think one thing I read was that they're worried about Japan like dropping out of K-pop. Basically, they're like if you get too political, they're not going to buy our stuff anymore. Is like what they kind of get threatened with, and it's just like wild. Reading through some of the demands, and some of the stuff was like could have been pretty outlandish and maybe just very specifically to one or two groups, but the things that they were just like allowed to do, not allowed to do was crazy. The fact that they like surgery was at the top of that list. So like wherever you got that information, like that is out there because I got the same thing. It's like they're encouraged. And I say that in quotes because I don't think it's encouragement. It's like, hey, we're making you a star here. Why don't you do this thing that will make you an even bigger star, And they've been right about everything and made you a star so far. So why wouldn't you believe that that would make things better too?
The only thing standing between you and success is a new chin. So why wouldn't you do it?
Right? Like, and that's just, I mean, it's so fucked up because a lot of these, like a lot of them are still like underage, right? That are in these really famous groups. Like they're, I mean, maybe early 20s at the oldest for a lot of them, I think, which is like my brain was not fully formed.
No.
At that point, and you've brought them up in this environment. It's like, I don't know. I think it's very strange what they don't allow them to do. It seems like they almost like stop them from growing up for a period of time, and then once their contract is done, they're like, okay, you can go do what you want now.
It's and the thing is, I don't think it's axiomatic like everyone who goes suffers, but you obviously have these stories, so people went through this. They probably don't push surgery on everyone. The major three, like the big three, is what they call those three different labels. Mm-hmm. Like SM Entertainment and the other ones that I'm totally shortchanging by not remembering off the top of my head.
Big Hit, I think, is the one that BTS is on. Big Hit Records or something.
Is it?
Them and Tomorrow X together, I think.
The big three are SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP Entertainment. And I think those, because they are so large and there is such scrutiny, have to be above board. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's still some shady contract shit, but I guess my point is I'm sure like not all of it is insanely predatory and awful and evil. And it does bring so much joy to so many people. You got to figure something like that can't 10 times out of 10 be tainted by evil.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. And there's a lot of, and that's the thing. I think one thing that is constantly underestimated by people that just like should know better and don't is the power of the fan base of like a lot of K-pop groups. Now, I don't know if there's like the BTS army. They're the most like famous version of it. It's like the Swifties, what a lot of people might know about, are like nothing compared to the BTS army. Like the BTS army will straight up like shut down like TV broadcasts. They'll straight up like if a politician is trying to like raise money, or when the I think when Texas had like the hotline for reporting abortions and like getting a reward for it, I think the BTS army is one of the groups that absolutely flooded that system with like false reports and everything to the point that it was just like useless to keep it going. So it's like they have the power when they gel together and decide to do something that they can make like legitimate changes in the way the world works, which is wild that it's a fan base to something like K-pop that can do that. But it's like generally, unless you're like made the main character by them, like generally they're doing okay things.
And that's the crazy thing in a kind of special way about K-pop fans and the way that they work is with celebrities, even with Instagram and social media, celebrities in America, it's a top-down relationship. Megan Thee Stallion is going to post pictures from her vacation. You're going to salivate over them. You're going to be reminded how much you love her. You're going to buy her next album, etc., etc. You have no real stake in Megan Thee Stallion other than what a fan you are. That's a very one-sided thing. But K-pop fans are really good at not just creating a community with each other, but forging a genuine what's called parasocial kin. They become more connected to the band. Like the band will do
Hmm.
pop-up signings, and like live performance is a huge part of K-pop, and they're just
Hmm.
constantly doing it. So like there's a lot of fan interaction and fan access. You're not having a fucking beer with them after, but like they are accessible to you because there are
Hmm.
so many groups and so many fans, you can move them all around. But like they're right there. You have that relationship, and out of that comes a sense of community. So like yes, there are creepers, and they have a specific term. They are called sasaengs, and they are like
Hmm.
dangerous stalkers who will actually stalk.
Yeah.
And then you have antis who just are antagonistic but not necessarily dangerous. And then you have the stands who are just this like wonderful community, like you talk about the abortion thing, BLM.
Hmm.
After the death of George Floyd, they rallied and they got like millions donated to BLM.
Hmm.
Pretty fucking wild stuff that
Yeah.
this community can rally like that, and they identify with like symbols and colors, and there's like fan chants that you know how to do and when to do. It's like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Hmm.
Like you have a part in the show. You can do a fan cam that focuses on your favorite sweetie. Like it's a highly like it's a very integrative
Hmm.
relationship and experience. Like you're a part of it. It's kind of fucking cool when you think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at it like the same as my fandom of Coheed. Like I've got I don't know how many Coheed shirts. Been to I think 8 Coheed concerts at this point, or I think this summer is going to be the 8th. I bought like box sets. I bought all their albums. Like it's like I've invested and given my time to Coheed. It's really not any different than these fans giving their time to these K-pop artists. And there are so many fucking K-pop bands. There are so many groups. I mean, I was reading through a list of like, and this is groups with like millions of listens and like millions of plays on. Like, there's probably 40 K-pop groups right now that have like millions of monthly listeners. It's crazy how much like because I feel like if you love K-pop, like that's probably the only kind of music that you really listen to. Because if that's what's giving you like those endorphins and like that good feeling, there's not a lot of other stuff that's going to deliver that for you. And I think like just the fact that there can be that kind of sustained like success over that many groups is wild and speaks to like how dedicated the fan base is. Because you're not getting just these fly by night like one time only fans. Like you're getting these people that constantly have these songs play on YouTube or Spotify, wherever they're getting their music from, they're constantly looping this stuff. And they feel like they want to contribute to the success of the artist probably as much as the artist does. That's the wild thing too, is that connection you're talking about. It's like a very symbiotic relationship between the group and their fan base, because the group goes and performs, the fan base is pleased, but the fan base participates as well. So the group gets more engagement that way, and it just bounces. They're just hitting that ball back and forth to each other. And each time they do it successfully, they get more popular and they get more influence, and it's like, I don't know if it's really a power dynamic, but I'm sure that like BTS fans love saying, oh, I'm a BTS fan. They're the best K-pop group. They're the most popular, and it's like, I'm sure I don't know if there's hatred between fan bases of different bands or maybe like healthy competition, but I think there was a lot of that. I remember in Backstreet Boys and NSYNC days, it was you were one or the other, fan of one or the other. You probably liked the music of both, but you preferred one over another. And I wonder if that sort of interaction happens. I imagine it does, and it's probably even easier now with things like Twitter and like YouTube comment sections and things like that, where you can make these connections with other people. They do these online events. Like Discord is huge for K-pop. We just use it to do our video chat for this podcast, but like Discord is huge. They do their like what do you call it? Like Discord server, where you like hop on and it's like everybody's talking to each other. If there's a new release like in their fan base, like it all gets like talked about in that or gets released there. It's like, I don't know, I feel like they do a lot of fan service really well. And because the fans respond to that so well, it's just like a constant, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more popular the groups get, the more the fans love them, the more the fans love them, the more popular the groups get.
Hey, everybody. Well, it wouldn't be Out on That Line if we didn't encounter some technical difficulty. Somewhere along the line, Discord completely dropped. Me and Geoff on both ends couldn't hear each other. Hilarious pantomime ensued. But we decided the easiest thing to do would be to record our final thoughts individually and just drop them in at the end here. Before I do that, I do want to remind you about our YouTube. Chances are you're listening to this on YouTube. That's where the action is. If you are not already subscribed, why don't you go on to youtube.com/C/Out on That Line. I also haven't mentioned Frank Zappa yet in this episode, so I'd better do that. That counts. Without further ado, I will place final thoughts.
Okay, so some final thoughts after some technical difficulties. So K-pop in general, to me, just I don't have an issue with it. I don't have a problem with with how much people love it. I know a lot of criticism gets thrown out about how like manufactured the music is, and how it's not a real thing, but it's real to the people that love it, and I think that's really all you can kind of ask for as far as like what someone can get out of music. So in my mind, it's fine. If you love pop music, if you loved like Backstreet Boys and bands like that back in the day, maybe you've grown out of that, but if you still love that kind of music, you may really love some stuff in K-pop. Because every different genre of pop music, they've got some huge artists that have come and done songs over there. So like Dua Lipa's done songs with them. I think A$AP Ferg, or there's Charlie XCX. There's a lot of folks that have gone over and done songs with K-pop artists. So it's clearly a worldwide, very popular genre right now. It doesn't seem like it's a flash in the pan because it's been around for a long time. So I suggest you go check it out. If you love pop music, if that's your deal, K-pop might just be your thing. So without further ado, until next time.
Okay. I'm going to try to keep my final thoughts about K-pop brief. Again, the main takeaway for me is the lore. The phenomenon, the experience, the juggernaut that is K-pop. The music is not for me. It is by design formulaic and unexciting and unadventurous. Well, unexciting is mean. Unexciting is harsh. The people that like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing they like. People get excited about K-pop. I'm not going to call it unexciting. Just personally, I don't get out of it what I think the millions and millions around the globe get out of it, and that's okay. I suspect it's not for me. It doesn't mean I can't appreciate it and appreciate what goes into it. And again, that sense of community that comes out of it, because people are extremely invested in these groups and these performers. And like I said earlier in the episode, it's something to believe in. We don't have a stream it, skip it in this instance since we talked about a genre. But I'm going to go ahead and say, do your research, check it out for yourself. You might find something you enjoy. You might just get dialed into what's going on around you, and I think that's valuable too. So those are my thoughts on K-pop. I'm out, and until next time.